South African sport has transformed dramatically over the last 4 decades. Of course, taking a look at the end of the international isolation, highlighted by victories from the Springboks in 1995 and more World Cups after that, the AFCON squad in 96, the 2010 FIFA World Cup hosted in South Africa, as well as other global achievements, including in athletics as well as swimming. So today we've roved in an athlete who shone bright at the 1992 Barcelona Olympics when she won a silver medal in one of our early successes as a country post-isolation, and that is none other than Olympic silver medalist Elana Meyer. And in studio, we've roped in a broadcaster who has covered most sport for the public broadcaster post-democracy, and certainly a veteran that I think inspired our generation now of sportscasters, Walter Mokoena. A very good morning to you, Walter. A good morning to you, Elana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Now, Elana, I'm going to start with you because I do understand we have you for a very limited amount of time. Talk to us about your experience going into those 1992 Olympics, because this is a period where South Africa is coming out of that isolation. Very little experience in terms of knowing what your competition is going to look like out on the track. Talk to us about what that experience felt like for you.
Yeah, I think 1992 Barcelona Olympics was definitely, I think one of the emotional highlights of my athletics career. Coming out of isolation, sort of into the unknown, brought a lot of excitement, but also a lot of nerves. I think stepping onto the track, in Barcelona, didn't really know and understand, what we are, moving into. So, I think it was an event, it was an Olympic Games with a lot of pressure, with a lot of anticipation, and walking away with a silver medal, the first in 30 years for South Africa, was definitely something, that is, will forever remain a highlight for me.
And you speak about it remaining a highlight for you. Perhaps then we touch on what it felt like for you as well as Josiah Tugwana, because of course when you go to the Olympic Village or returning back home to South Africa as a silver medalist, what was that like when you returned home, touched down in Mzansi, and you're coming back not only with what you left with, but there's an extra piece of silver that you come back home with?
Yeah, I think that was something that, have touched my heart, really. I'm coming back, and one of the boards was saying, Soweto loves you. And I think that is something, that really meant a lot to me, especially in those years. Today still, I try to give back to the sport that I love so much, and want to pass on the baton to a new generation. And watching the Commonwealth Games now, and seeing South Africa, they competing, giving their best, having a couple of narrow misses on medals, really make my heart happy.
I absolutely love that. So heartwarming. And we've seen you passing on the baton and still being involved in marathons in South Africa, and just almost creating a path for those that follow after you. Someone else has done that, joining us in studio as well, Walter Mokoena. Walter, this is where it all began for you. Talk to us about what that journey looked like, joining the likes of Umadlu Phuthi, Robert Marawa, Martin Locke, and just almost setting a trend for the generation that would follow after you, because we all knew Monday nights, Soccer Zone, it was you.
Mango, thank you very much for inviting me. But first, happy 90th birthday to the SABC, which is really the custodian of our collective national memory. We're talking about the great performances of Elana. I mean, I was a 12-year-old watching those Barcelona Olympics and having this dream that one day I'd like to be a broadcaster. And this is where really it all started, as you say, coming in there. I used one word in those days. We were the rock stars. We came in here post-apartheid South Africa. We said we want to do this thing. We want to redefine it. And you've already mentioned your Robert Marawa, Martin Locke, the late Tutumila Mateza, the late David Kekana. So that was the generation that really shaped the narrative in those late 90s and early 2000s.
And the responsibility of delivering sports to the nation, it's a big one, because I think sometimes people take for granted. Sports lovers don't just want to listen to anyone. They want you to have that credibility to be able to take what you say to heart. Talk to me about that added responsibility as a sportcaster.
Well, obviously, I was very young when I set foot here in this building. I was 22 years old. It was August of 2000, so that's 26 years ago. And obviously you're nervous because you don't know, what's going to happen, because one show, something could go horribly wrong and they think, this guy is actually nice, but not at this level. So obviously that sense of responsibility with Mabaleng in those days, which I still think it was a great sports show every Saturday from 12 to 6. And, but it was a great training ground. You got a lot of support, you got a lot of training. And I think all the people who came through the SABC, wherever they've gone to, you could see that this was the University of Broadcasting in South Africa and on the continent as well. So the responsibility was huge, and you had to handle it with a certain level of, of care and how you relate to your audience, your professionalism, your commitment to the job. So I would say really you had to step up to the plate from the first show.
Indeed. Speaking about stepping up to the plate, Elana, let me bring you in before we say goodbye to you. Just in terms of the importance of being seen by the public, the South African public, whether rich or poor, irrespective of where anyone comes from, how important that is from an athlete point of view, because the public broadcaster, we know, reaches millions across South Africa. It does seem like we have lost Elana there. Perhaps then, Walter, I can bring that same question to you. Just being able to connect people across the entire nation as a broadcaster, not only in South Africa, but the rest of the continent, looking at the reach of the SABC.
But remember, in those days, it's not so obvious that we didn't have Google, in fact. So you had to work a lot more harder. You couldn't just at the click of a button have all the information on your iPad or on your phone. So you basically had to go watch training sessions, write your own notes, or do your homework during the week, because you knew that the viewer is relying on you and delivering accurate news in the build-up and all the shows that you were doing. So it was very difficult in those days. It's a lot easier now. Someone can just walk in an hour before the show. I'm not saying that's what you guys do.
No, that's not what I do.
Yeah, as you click in, all the stats are there. We didn't have all of it. So you had to work a little bit harder to make sure that you give that uniqueness, to the viewer, knowing they would know that every time I watch the show, there's something new I would learn, that because there's no social media in those days, so you could deliver those scoops, and people were looking forward to that.
Well, thank you for delivering those scoops for us as South Africans for a very long period of time, and for setting the standard for the rest of us in terms of what it means to be a sport broadcaster.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the SABC as well, because it wouldn't have been possible without this great institution, and may it continue, playing the important role that it does in the life of South Africans.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Walter Mokoena joining us here this morning on Morning Live, veteran broadcaster. And of course, we did lose our connection to Elana Meyer, who is also joining us virtually.